Good morning, everyone. First of all, really good afternoon, my apology. Welcome to Illinois Muslims Needs, Assets, and Opportunities Cook County Roundtable. I am, as Julia indicated, Gia Orr. I am the Vice Chair of Cook County's Commission on Human Rights and the Director of Community Relations, Resources, and Legislative Affairs at the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission, where we safeguard the rights of persons with disabilities. I am joined virtually today by several Cook County Board commissioners, including Commissioners Elma Anaya, Commissioner Scott Britton, Commissioner Dennis Deere, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Commissioner Stanley Moore, and Commissioner Kevin Morrison. Cook County Commission on Human Rights Chair S. Mayumi, also known as Yumi, Grigsby, Chief of Staff at the Chicago Foundation for Women, is also my counterpart, and Commission Director Sisvana Baker, as well as several Commission staff members. We thank you all for your presence today. The Commission on Human Rights is an enforcement agency that seeks to protect people in Cook County from discrimination and harassment in the areas of employment, housing, public accommodations, credit transactions, and access to Cook County facilities, services, and programs. We enforce the Human Rights Ordinance, which is our anti-discrimination and harassment law, as well as several labor laws, including Cook County's minimum wage and earned sick leave ordinances. If you would like to learn more about the Cook County Commission on Human Rights, we invite you to check our pages on cookcountyil.gov, Facebook, and Twitter, or join us for an upcoming commission meeting, which are always public and open. And as always, please do not hesitate to contact the Commission to file a complaint if you have experienced discrimination or harassment within Cook County. We know that Cook County is the most diverse county in Illinois. Within that population is the largest per capita Muslim population in the state and the nation. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Dr. Dilara Sayeed, President of the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, and Dr. Joseph Hoereth, Director of the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement, University of Illinois, Chicago. Kevin Fee of ACLU, Illinois, and Dr. Constance Shabazz of Salem Health Clinic, who will help us better understand who Cook County's Muslim population is and what their needs and assets are. We are excited and thankful for all, and that all are here to share their expertise, and further, that we have the space in Cook County's Racial Equity Week to have this conversation about opportunities to support and collaborate with Cook County's Muslim communities. And with that, I will pass it on to Dr. Dilara Sayeed to begin the formal presentation. Thank you all. Have a blessed, wonderful, and progressive day.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orr. We're honored to be here today, and you are absolutely right. We have some of the most diverse communities across the globe right here in our state. And we wanted to begin with actually sharing with you a big picture of what the report has found and what our work has found. And the big picture is that the American Muslim story is part of the American story. It joins all of the other stories of those who are African American, those who are Irish American, those who are Jewish American, those who are Asian Americans, and every other community, Latinos, African immigrants, etc. The American Muslim story is 400 years plus old. old in the United States, even before we became a nation. And we have a one-pager on our website that you are welcome to download and share and better understand this community. So as we zoom out to the American story, we then zoom in to why Illinois, why Chicago, why Cook County? And as Vice Chair Hoereth said, Illinois has the largest per capita Muslim population, which kind of means you're more likely to meet a Muslim as a neighbor, as your banker, as your Uber driver, as your cashier, as your doctor. And so Illinois Muslims are in all different backgrounds, and we'll share a little bit about the data today, as well as take questions from you about our communities, assets, our needs, and of course, the opportunities to engage better. Now, let's then zoom into Cook County. And from the Illinois Muslims Report, a historic report that was convened by the Muslims across the state. The research was done by the University of Illinois at Chicago Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement, as well as the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding out in DC. And this critical study showed that in Illinois, Cook County is the most populous county for Muslims. Cook County is one of the largest counties in the nation. And to know that 48% of all Illinois Muslims are in Cook County helps us really understand, okay, who are they? What do they bring to the table when we are working, playing, eating, praying, and making a life in Illinois? So I'm going to tag team with my dear friend and brother, Dr. Joe Hoereth, and we're going to go back and forth and help you understand the data better.
Thank you, Dilara. I just want to make sure everyone can see slides. I'm not seeing slides, so I just want to make sure because I have quite a bit of visual information to share with you today, and it's important that you can see them. So
I don't see them yet.
You don't see them yet. Okay.
No.
Are we?
Does this help you?
I see them now.
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
So please do call out if you don't see them, because we want to absolutely make sure you see the slides. So I'm going to go back just a minute to make sure that you all see the, are you able to see this, commissioners and guests? Yeah. Okay, got it. And this is the one story that I was referencing that has the, that is on our website. It is a one-pager that goes through 400 years of Muslim stories in America. And then why Illinois?
Thank you.
And then, of course, why Cook County?
Thank you for this.
Data is very clear. All right,
Clear.
Dr. Joe.
Thank you, Dilara. As Dilara mentioned, I'm Joe Hoereth, Director of the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement. We're in the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs at University of Illinois, Chicago, and we are the proud partner, research partner on this project. Our main role was to field the survey, compile the results, and along with our research partner, the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, analyze and write up the results, which are in a fantastic report. That report, though, is very long and chock filled with data and visuals and other things, so we can't possibly go over everything. But I will just touch on different highlights, highlight different results from the survey in this presentation. Just a quick note about what the survey was. So it's 1,760 responses. We use something called a snowball methodology, where you reach out to people in networks, and then they reach out to others. So every node is asked to share the link, and it's a great way to get a large number of surveys within a network. And of course, we use the rich and wide network of Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition and the broader coalition as well. So statewide, responses of 1,760 fielded between fall 2021 and January 2022. There's a lot of technical caveats to everything about the research, and that's in the full report. But I'll start with just sort of who responded and a little bit about what the Muslim community in population in Illinois looks like. So that slide that you were just looking at, which had the pie chart, shows us the population, the racial breakdown of the population in Illinois. And this is just using polling data from, a research firm called SSRS, which is a national polling firm, just projected this from census data, which is really the best way to get the most current breakdown of this information. And you can see there 31% Asian, 23% white, 35% other. Just a note about the white population, Arab is mixed in there, and that's conflated in there. That's just a function of how the census works. And then note about the Asian population, 31% shown there. In our sample, the vast majority of the Asian respondents were South Asian in our sample predominantly. So, and then one other note, as you'll see as we go through the slides, this first slide showing that the sample is younger than the general public, is that our research partner completed the same survey to a sample of the general public so that we could use that as a basis for comparison. And so you can see our sample, the top row there, 50% in that age, that younger adult bracket, 18 to 35, and then 35% in that 36 to 55. Both of those percentages larger than the sample in the general public.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please.
And Joe, if I may add,
Mm-hmm.
what this really means for our Illinois community is we have decades of young families, young entrepreneurs, young neighbors that are moving in and starting their families and getting to work, to be taxpayers and to be voters. And so this is really critical to know that 50% are under the age of 35. It really surprised me and actually made me really happy. Like my kids, I want to keep them in Illinois.
And I think contrary to, thank you for pointing that out, Dilara, what people typically expect of surveys is that older folks are more likely to fill them out. So that was really great to see the representation of younger folks in this sample. Also, the Illinois Muslim respondents were more likely than the general public to hold a college degree or higher. So you can see in the light blue there, 40% of our sample versus 28% of the general public. And then folks who also had some or technical degree in the light green, adding to that particular observation from the survey. Next slide. It should be noted that about half of the sample were born in the U.S. Those born outside were mostly naturalized citizens. So we see here 45% indicating they were born in the U.S. 92% of our sample was eligible to vote, which is similar to national data. Also want to note that immigration and arriving folks arriving to the U.S. as refugees is a part of the American Muslim story. And so when, the role that plays into how people answer this particular question. And then we fielded the survey, but we also complemented that with focus groups, which were conducted after the survey was completed. And those focus groups gave us some context to follow up on with folks. And in that, we also heard from respondents the extent to which their Muslim identity is intertwined and connected to their strong American identity. It's part of that identity, that American Muslim identity.
Mm-hmm. And
Dilara,
Joe,
next slide for you.
Joe spoke about 92% being eligible to vote. And of those 92% eligible to vote, over 90% are planning on voting or are already registered to vote. And so you see the strong civic engagement. And again, this is across racial communities, right? In areas of Cook County where we know our African-American communities live, there's an overlap between African-American, Christians, Muslims, and other faith backgrounds, and they're relatively strong voters. And the young African-American community could be stronger voters. We see in South Asian communities, which is often on the north side of Chicago, North Cook County, such as Morton Grove, Niles, etc. And then now the far northwest suburbs, where Kevin Morrison, our commissioner, will speak in a few minutes about like just what he's seeing there, the growth in the community. And so you see a strong civic engagement community. And of course, I forgot the southwest suburbs where we have our large Arab populations. So Muslim voters are growing in all these areas, and they're making a difference in the districts in these areas. And the next thing we see is that actually when politically Muslim voters identify as Democrats, which many minority groups will identify as Democrats, but they also identify quite a bit as independent. Take a look at this bar graph. This actually is a wake-up call, and I think this also mirrors the Latino community and a growing number of African-American communities that are saying, don't take our voters for granted. So regardless of the party, our voters vote on independence, on the candidate, on the qualifications. And so you have an opportunity to not only capture the Democrat vote, but also to grow it with the independent vote. And if you're of other parties, Republican, et cetera, you certainly have an opportunity to engage voters. So there's no one who should not be at the table in our communities of any race, any faith, any background. I'd like to stop here and ask Commissioner Elma Anaya, who's joined us, to please share just a couple minutes on what she's seeing in her district.
Dr. Sayeed, and thank you all for the invitation and for making me a part of this very important conversation. And of course, the Commission on Human Rights for convening us today in this Racial Equity Week, and again, in this very important conversation. So I think a lot of the things that I wanted to make sure to highlight have been already mentioned, but what I would like to add and reiterate is that the fact that the Muslim community continues to be a very large and diverse community in Cook County. I know it was mentioned 48% of Muslims in Illinois live in Cook County. And the strong identity that we have seen here it really transcends, again, all racial, other different, ethnic or racial groups that we may think. So I'm Commissioner Elma Anaya. I represent the biggest concentration of Latinos in Cook County, the biggest concentration of immigrants in Cook County. I represent the southwest side, again, of Chicago. So a lot of the communities like Bryant Park, McKinley Park, Little Village, Pilsen. I go all the way to Vidham Park, and some of the my southern boundaries are like areas by Marquette Park. And I think one of the things that we have seen through the census is the increase of different populations. Although this is majorly, again, a very heavy Latino district, we are seeing this intersectionality between individuals. And I had, many opportunities to talk to Dr. Sayeed and other partners, and have seen the growing population of Latino Muslims. And it was highlighted in the presentation that about 8% of the Muslim community in Illinois are considered Hispanic. And at this moment, roughly about a little less than 1% speak Spanish. But I think that what we've seen in the trends in the census that continues to grow. And I think it again highlights the different diversity and the fact that the Muslim community is growing young and diverse. So I continue to listen to these great opportunities that we have to work together and to figure out the different, again, needs that the community needs different supports, and how here in Cook County we can be great partners to advocate for the diversity and the different needs that the Muslim community needs. So thank you so much again, Dr. Sayeed, for inviting me today. I know I had a quick minute or so to kind of express what's going on in my district, and of course in the Latino community, and again extend all of my partnership in ensuring that this continues to be a message that we bring forward here in Cook County. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll hear from other commissioners as well. It's wonderful to have so many of you all join us in the leadership. So the next part of the presentation is set up in two ways. One is expertise, generosity, assets, basically, of this diverse and vast community. And then the second part will be needs and the critical ways that government, allies, partners, and neighbors can support often invisible communities, often marginalized communities who are still growing and resilient. So, Joe?
Thanks, Dilara. One set of questions that we asked folks about was their employment situation, and as well as the sectors in which they are employed. So about 1/5, as you can see here on the slide, 1/5 of the Muslim sample works in the healthcare field. And we see strong representation in other sectors as well, including technology, there in gray, business in pink, and education in blue. And so we can see the strong representation in these sectors as an asset. Certainly with 1/5 working in the healthcare industry, just think about what that meant during the pandemic and for COVID, where Muslims are represented in the workforce.
Mm-hmm. And you see here just example after example, like we tease in our family, like my daughter was considering a career, right? She's 8th grader. She's thinking about career a few years ago. And so we said, so what would you like to be? Would you like to be an artist? And she said, well, I'm not very good at drawing, and maybe I'm not great at art class. And I said, well, would you like to be a doctor? And she's like, oh, we don't need another Muslim doctor in the world. And so they themselves, the kids know this. And so healthcare, education, technology, my son is in technology, and so has fit that kind of stereotype. But we also want to point out the underemployment as well. And that is not to be ignored. The underemployment and the unemployment in our community is something that we always worry about.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that a little bit also in the next slide, Dilara, as a sort of counterpoint to that, where we see another asset of the Muslim community being that they're job creators. More than 1 in 10 in the Muslim sample are self-employed or business owners, and so you can see here in the figure, with 44% being employed full time. And in the green, self-employed being the green being self-employed business owners at 12%, which is higher than the rate of the general public. And you can extrapolate from this response to what we know to be the Muslim population of 220,000 estimated in the state, and extrapolate to estimate that Muslims in Illinois create more than 350,000 jobs, nearly 6% of all jobs in Illinois, while making up only 2.8%, I should say, of the population. So that's what I was referring to as, here we see an engine of job creation within the Muslim community. However, that is not to overshadow the fact that Dilara just pointed out that we still had 20% of folks saying they were unemployed when we fielded this survey. So there's a need buried here within this observation of this asset. Of course, this survey was fielded near the tail end of the pandemic, but still, it's notable to see that high unemployment rate. And then Illinois Muslims give generously. The majority of Muslim respondents donate to community organizations. 83% contributing money to a cause or an institution affiliated with their faith in the last month. This generosity is a complete asset and wonderful aspect of the Muslim community. And the concepts of zakat and sadaqah mean charity and philanthropy and are no doubt drivers of that 83% that we saw, much higher than the Illinois general public. And Dilara, is there some context you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just something we're raised on from day one. And I think we share this with many other faiths, right? Where from day one, your parents give you an allowance and they ask you to put a little bit away for savings and put a little way away to give to charity, right? It's something that's inculcated in children. And I know as adults, like my first job, it was always put a little bit away for savings and then make sure I'm giving a little bit to charity. And so the idea of zakat is a requirement of charity to be Muslim. And the idea of sadaqah is actually means philanthropy and charity. That is something you go above and beyond to try to do. And it's everything from smiling at your neighbors to ensuring that nobody in your community is going hungry. And it's really important. So, yeah. Wanted to ask Commissioner Dennis Deere to share a little bit. Dennis, Commissioner Deere is both in the city and in the South Side areas. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I didn't know I was speaking, but always a pleasure to speak. Thank you. Thank you. I'm always ready. Thanks for having me on today. Again, it's always a pleasure to work with my good friend, Dr. Sayeed. My district covers a multitude. We cover the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. Very diverse district, being the second county district. We cover a good swath of the West Side, which is predominantly African American community. We go all the way downtown and cover a good portion of the loop from the Chicago River on back, and that's a diverse community. And we go all the way south to 75th Street on the south side of Chicago, and then back to Ashland. So we cover a great big ground. Lots of Muslims in our area, in our district, from the west side to downtown to further south. Our census showed that we picked up a good, decent amount of individuals, so much so that we had to shed some people out of our district because it grew so much. We are about 53% African American in our district, and it is a bustling district. But as I mentioned to you, we have two of the most underserved areas in Cook County, including North Lawndale as well as Inglewood. So in those areas where we see a lot of individuals who are African American, who happen to be Muslim as well, and looking to work and partner to make sure that we can get things done. Again, I agree. There are a lot of individuals in the African American community who identify as Democrat, but the new trend is independent. And so individuals are wanting to know that we're going to represent their causes and represent their issues. That's one thing, as you know, by our track record that we make every attempt to do and are doing. And so thank you for this time. I appreciate it very much. Onward with our partnership and continuing to make sure that equity is at the center of every single thing that we do. Mm-hmm. I'll end with this. If you always do what you've always done, you're going to always get what you've always got. That's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again. That's not mine, that's Socrates. But what is mine is, in order for you to get something that you've never, in order for you to do something that you've never done, in order to get something you never had, you got to do something you've never done. And so we're continuing to do that in this fight to ensure appropriate equity. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Commissioner Deere. And to your speaking of the diversity of the South Side African American community, there's a history why when I showed the demographics and Dr. Hoereth spoke about the great big African American community in Illinois. Illinois was where our Black Americans came after Jim Crow laws made it impossible to live in the South. So in the 1920s and 1930s, we had a great migration. And that great migration wasn't immigrants coming from another country. It was African Americans coming from the South post-slavery into the North. Illinois was one of those sanctuary welcome states since then. Chicago was supposed to be one of those, Chicagoland was one of those areas. And that's why you see Muslims, Christians, African Americans of all backgrounds on the South Side, West Sides, and the growing communities across Chicagoland. And I did say supposed to be because we haven't always kept our promise to be the sanctuaries and the welcoming areas that we were supposed to be for all our great migrants, as well as our immigrants from other countries. So it's a chance for our board and commissioners and our leaders across the state to learn about our communities and to do better. So let's go on now to those critical needs, because it's exactly about how do we do better.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dilara, and thank you, Commissioner Deere, for your comments as well. There were questions in the survey from which we can glean observations that are ready for discussion, policy discussion at any level of government. And so what we tried to do was to highlight a couple of those. So we'll just mention first, one need being affordable, culturally appropriate mental health services. Now, I guess it's not unusual to say that any population needs mental health services. However, we asked folks, there was a number of folks in our survey who had indicated they had felt they needed mental health services, but didn't actually seek them, didn't take steps to seek them. So we asked them, why not? And that's the figure you're seeing there. And what sticks out nice and high there is that 35% too expensive. And so maybe not a surprise, but definitely confirmed that cost by the survey, that cost is the largest barrier to accessing treatment from a mental health professional. And here we have, the survey to sort of back up that observation, or what some folks may assume to be common knowledge. But when you're thinking about priorities and policy issues, this could be right up there on the table. Another need is improved access and awareness of job placement opportunities in social services. And 1/3 of the Muslim sample was worried about being able to just pay their bills. And we know this is something that's felt by a lot of households, of course. But here we have, 33% of our respondents saying that specifically. And so, when we're talking about a county agency serving as broad a population as Cook County does, with as many Muslims as we have in the county, this need is very prescient. It's there, and the strategies to combat it. Folks are talking about those kind of things all the time: reducing barriers, increasing awareness of such programs, helping folks to navigate the system, issues of transportation, and whatever else. Really, we're seeing the need displayed here through the survey for the Muslim population as well.
Here we also just wanted to add the dichotomy you see and the complexity of a community, right? You talk about the generosity of the community and they're giving a lot. You talk about they're highly educated, but then you talk about those who are hurting, that are really struggling to pay the bills. And so again, as Commissioner Deere said, our community is like the city of Chicago or his district. It is some of the wealthiest people you'll meet and some of the poorest people you'll meet, some of the most educated you will meet, and some of the least educated that are struggling to get educated. And so we have all of this complexity in the community. And one of the things we'll see is even though a family may be hurting, they may still give charity. And so leaders might say, oh, no problem, this community's got it, they don't need us. And the answer is no, they do need you more. And even though they need you, they're still giving to others, and they're trying to be, the best they can be. And so sometimes you have to peel away at the surface to understand the real challenges of a community. And we hope our leaders do that.
Definitely. Thank you, Dilara. One additional need is more halal options. Now, do want to acknowledge that the concept of halal is a broad concept. However, this particular question focused on food. And so we asked about that specifically in the survey. 94% of folks saying that halal way of life is important to them. Well, then it's definitely a problem for them if their school-age child or a college student is expressing they don't have access to food options that meet their dietary restrictions. And so we see that in the Muslim sample at a higher percentage than in the Illinois general public, both for parents of school-age children and for college students themselves. So again, when we're thinking about policy options, we're thinking about how to have folks have healthy and food options that meet their restrictions. Halal options could be and should be on the table there.
Mm-hmm. And when we say halal, the word is an Arabic word, which means recommended, permitted, truly valued by our Creator. And so halal could be no interest lending. It could be making sure that animals that you slaughter are raised humanely and slaughtered humanely and eaten respectfully without waste. Halal could be the way that we engage with each other respectfully. And it certainly can be the way we dress, act, play, work with the high ethical values. And so that's what really halal is. And then halal food is, something we can actually, say, well, you can have halal food on your table. And we do have a bill in legislation. So please, if you have your legislators, please tell them to pass a bill that requires halal and kosher options. We want all faith communities to be able to have the dietary restrictions and guidelines met. And that should go to vote this fall in our state legislature.
Thank you, Dilara. The next need identified with some policy implications is this concept we're calling the sandwich generation. And so we asked folks whether they care for an elder parent in their home, and 29% indicated that they do. So we followed that up with another question about, well, how are you caring and what does that care require? And you can see there in the graph the answers to the different types of care. And when you look at the top ones, you see transportation, you see health-related tasks, and you see things like assisting with sort of social activities. And these are all time-intensive activities. And for those of us who have cared for an elder person in our household, maybe these sound familiar to you. Driving to doctor's appointments, assisting with medications, taking them to whatever, meet up with friends or participate in activities. These add to the responsibilities of a parent or an adult in the household who may also be caring for their own children. And so that's that sandwich generation, and the pressure and the sort of taxing, both obviously financially, but also mentally and emotionally, that this can take on folks can be significant, and points to the need for more support for elderly care. Of course, further research would be needed to better understand the full mental health impact, but we're certainly seeing this as a potential gap in services.
So we're going to move on from, we talked a little bit about assets and we talked a little bit about some of the needs that we think government and legislation and philanthropy can help support. But there's some real challenges to diversity. You know, Cook County is the most diverse county in the state and probably one of the most diverse in the nation. And yet challenges to diversity through discrimination and hate exist. So I'm going to share, Joe's going to show some of those challenges.
Yes. There's definitely an asset in the Muslim community of this strong faith identity. I alluded to it early on when we were talking about just the number of Muslims and who are born in the U.S. and the extent to which that identity is wrapped up with their American identity. But it is also deeply a part of who our respondents said they were. And so 84% said their faith is very important to their self-perception, compared with 39% of the Illinois general public. And this matters because if you really want to better understand the needs and assets of this community, you have to understand how strong that faith rooting is in that identity. And then religious discrimination. More than half of the Illinois Muslim sample reported facing religious discrimination. We're seeing that if you look at the regularly, occasionally, and rarely. I mean, you ask folks if they've faced religious discrimination in the last 12 months, even someone who's saying they faced it rarely is too much, right? So this is definitely a need. This is definitely a challenge. As Commissioner Deere said, making sure we're thinking about equity in all aspects of what we do, and that people are free to be themselves without persecution. And then another need, bullying. Nearly 1/3 of the Illinois Muslim sample with school-age children reported having a child who faced bullying. And again, sort of an extension of the religious discrimination, but we also asked of those who indicated their child had experienced this, what was the nature of that kind of bullying? Was it based on their religion? Was it based on their race? And so you can see the breakdown there of the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And again, among Muslims, 14% stated that their child were bullied because of their race. So you see here religion and race interplaying and combining and compounding for these children.
And this question was asked in the past 12 months, have your child experienced? So there's two caveats we wanted to share. The past 12 months when this survey was released was COVID. So most students weren't in school. So there's something to think about when we say that there's a large number of both in the general population and in the Muslim population that say they're not bullied, was also because they weren't at school over those last 12 months very much. It was more virtual school, not in person. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing is simply that this is a community that does not report. I remember as a kid in the city of Chicago being bullied, and I was at Chicago Public Schools, and my parents basically said, get stronger. This is the best we can do. You've got to make it work. They would say, get better, and that was just the way it was. Basically, it was kind of the suck it up attitude that many parents have because they've struggled a lot to get here and to be where they are, and they need to make sure that their kids are just trying their best. Now, that doesn't at all in any way excuse it, but we want to explain that there might be underreporting. In fact, we know there's underreporting, but because there's a culture of doing our best regardless of what the situation is like. And that is across Black and brown and tan and white communities. And so those are ways to also look at this. The Attorney General of Illinois has said we are underreporting hate crimes and discrimination. So part of this is going to be our public officials making the reporting of bullying and discrimination easier and less on the person doing the reporting. And we're going to hear from our ACLU ally in just a minute on that as well.
Thanks, Dilara, for adding that context. And then the last need I wanted to highlight here or second to last, I think, was more than 1/3 of the Muslim sample reported resistance to mosque expansion or building plans. And this was something we asked about specifically, where to better understand how folks were experiencing reaction from their communities to the presence or expansion of their faith center. And you see there 39% indicated directly yes, 30% saying we didn't go to the zoning board at all, 31% saying no. So the resistance is there, but also we don't really know a lot about how this is playing out. There's a national study toolkit out by the Research Partner Institute for Social Policy and Understanding that goes a little more in depth in this issue. But we know that resistance is present here in Chicago and the suburbs. And then the need to combat religious discrimination, we just thought it would be helpful to if we just dropped in a couple of quotes from our focus groups related to this issue. Here, where one respondent indicated, in my view, the greatest challenge is Islamophobia, which is causing a security issue. Here we had an imam indicating that they had to hire a security guy to protect them in their mosque. It's hard for me when we have a security guy who's armed. He must be present at the door. And when children come, they ask why he has to be here. And so just even the need to be able to keep yourself safe and the visibility of that and what that means and how that plays on children in your community, can definitely have an impact. And closes that comment with, when will we feel safe again to go back to normal, right? Maybe he doesn't want to have the negative impact of having the child in the mosque see or have to be afraid of somebody who's armed. But also, if you didn't have them, right, then you would feel vulnerable. So it's sort of a catch-22 and a really difficult situation, but highlighted by that quote.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Joe. We wanted to share some words from our great ally and partner, the ACLU of Illinois, and actually ACLU National, that has been working with us. The Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition has over 150 partners and allies of all backgrounds and faiths, because we work for all backgrounds and faith communities. And Kevin Fee, Ed Yonke, Colleen McConnell, the team at ACLU Illinois has been great. Kevin?
Thanks so much, Dilara, and thanks to all of you for this great presentation, this really fascinating report, and of course to the commissioners and all of you for the invitation to speak today. It's so important to highlight the contributions of the vibrant and diverse Muslim community here in Illinois. And we here at the ACLU of Illinois have long valued our partnership with the Muslim Civic Coalition, the Council of Islamic Organizations, and CARE. And it's so nice to see all of you here. My name is Kevin Fee. As Dilara said, I'm Senior Special Litigation Counsel at the ACLU of Illinois. And as they say, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, right? And so, we at the ACLU of Illinois make it our mission to protect against curtailments of civil rights and civil liberties, which are, of course, never guaranteed and always face new threats. And of course, those threats to civil liberties are especially pronounced for minority communities, which are often first in line to be targeted, especially in tumultuous times when sort of fear has a tendency to overtake the public consciousness and leads to these sort of reactive threats to our most treasured freedoms. And no one understands this phenomenon, of course, better than the Muslim community here in Illinois and elsewhere, which has been targeted time and time again with overbroad, overreaching, and discriminatory public and sometimes government-sponsored targeting based on frankly just fear. And the ACLU has been proud to work with CARE and the Muslim community across a number of these unfortunate eras after 9/11 and during the Iraq War. We worked to represent and to arrange representation for young Muslim men who were targeted for FBI interviews based solely on their religion. We emphasized the importance of competent legal counsel during intrusive and potentially dangerous government questioning based on faith and targeting. We filed a class action suit on behalf of Akaf Rahman, who was a U.S.-born Muslim citizen who was repeatedly harassed and subjected to multi-hour detention at airports because of his faith, as well as a class of similarly targeted Muslim Americans. And finally, after the Trump administration announced its infamous Muslim bans, the ACLU and attorneys from Illinois here spent time at O'Hare Airport counseling and representing Muslim travelers stopped during flights. And we've worked with CARE on speaking engagements throughout the Chicago Muslim community. And the underlying principle here, of course, is that targeting and profiling people, and certainly entire communities, for extra scrutiny because of their faith or any other personal characteristic is just fundamentally wrong and deeply un-American. And so at the ACLU, we remain committed to working with great organizations like CARE, the Council, the Civic Coalition, who represent minority communities here in Illinois. And again, really, thanks so much for inviting us to be here and for all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. We also wanted to make sure that we, again, shared that the work that ACLU, many other organizations are doing needs all our support. And to access the full report, you just have to go to www.illinoismuslims.org. You can read the full report there. Much of what Kevin and all of the other commissioners and Joe and I are talking about all day is on the report. And then, of course, you can also download the report so you've got a PDF copy. The last part is recommendations and opportunities. And that's why we said, please do access the report, because there's a section for recommendations across every single sector. We're going to try to very quickly highlight a couple. We have just a couple of minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. But one is government and policymakers. Clearly, there are recommendations in the work that we just shared for government officials, elected officials, and policymakers to ensure that Muslim experts are tapped for the work and guidance that you need, making sure that outreach to Muslim constituents in all the different languages and communities we live and work in, and to ensure that discrimination, Islamophobia, wherever it comes from, is something that all of us are careful about. And we say this as allies to our Jewish community, where we're fighting anti-Semitism with them, to our Asian communities, where we're fighting anti-Asian hate with them. And so we, again and again, in our African-American communities, where we're fighting anti-Black discrimination with. And so there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to do it together, and we need our government and policymakers. Educators, imagine this kind of knowledge going to every teacher and every principal at every school across our city, our counties, and our states. Really critical, because we bring, honestly, implicit biases to the work that we do and the people we meet. We can clarify a lot of them with reports like this and presentations like this. I'm a former 5th and 8th grade teacher. Those were some of the best years of my life, some of the most challenging years of my life, and some of the most rewarding times of my career. But I know when I learned more about my students, I could do better for my students. And we hope that all educators see that. Direct social service providers, again, we have recommendations on how to work with Muslim communities, business community, philanthropists. We find that often we're invisible when funders are looking for areas to give money to and support. We also find that government agencies are not supporting our organizations. So we encourage our Cook County Board and all government agencies to find the funding to support organizations that are doing this work. The coalition has over 150 partners. We're happy to make connections, and we're happy to also do sub-grants for this kind of work. And we thank all our allies, advocates, and practitioners. Again, we can't do this work unless we do it together. Joe, I'm going to have you wrap up the research part, and then we'll go to our last commissioners.
I think, thank you, Dilara. And just in the vein of being a good researcher, you always end with future research, right? What more could be done to better understand what we've just learned? And three bullets jump out at us. Further research that robustly examines the perspectives of Black Muslims. And when we use Black Muslims, that term in the report, we mean Muslims, African American Muslims of any sect. But further research is needed to really dig deep. It's a significant segment of the population here, and distinct from others in important ways. And so we need further research there. Further research that focused the needs on economically disadvantaged Muslims in Illinois. You heard from Dilara this sort of dichotomy within the population of folks who are doing quite well, and then folks who economically have significant need. And we need to really dig deep and understand that. And then greater exploration of the healthcare needs of Muslim patients, in particular, why they seem to be less likely than the general public to seek care when they need it, to better understand what those barriers are.
Thank you. And I'd like to turn it to Commissioner Kevin Morrison on the Northwest side, who's seen his district change quite a bit.
Dilara, thank you so much for having me here today. And it's been great to hear from all of our speakers, especially the great work Kevin Fee mentioned from the ACLU. I'm Kevin Morrison. I represent the 15th district in the Northwest suburbs on the county board. I want to thank you all so much for having me here today and helping celebrate Cook County's Racial Equity Week. Racial Equity Week represents the county's commitment to highlighting and supporting the increasing diversity across our communities. The county has worked hard to support racial equity across the board through both policy and practice. Indeed, the volume and diversity of events we have highlighted really show these growing demographic changes that we are experiencing, which is beautiful, and I'm happy that we're able to highlight. My district in the Northwest suburbs is home to one of the largest South Asian populations. Oh, sorry, I just sorry, I realized the video cut off. I apologize. My district in the Northwest suburbs is home to one of the largest South Asian populations in the entire county. We have a high percentage of Pakistani and Indian Muslim individuals. I know that based on how the census conducts its and collects its demographic data, it is often difficult to parse through and get accurate information on how large the Muslim population is. But for example, just taking the Asian population in the 15th district is over 19%. And this is one of the many reasons why I decided to lead and work with my fellow commissioner, Scott Britton, on the passage of the Voting Opportunity and Translation Equity Ordinance. The ordinance expanded the required translated languages offered on the ballot and voting materials to an additional 8 languages, which include Arabic, Urdu, and Gujarati. We also offer a plethora of translation and language assistance throughout the county. So if you're with an organization and doing an event and you need a translator or assistance translating materials, please reach out to your commissioner and we'll inquire and try to get you that assistance. Within that statistic are a tapestry of different ethnicities and cultures that all bring valuable ideas and experiences to our home. So with that in mind, I want to thank you, Dr. Dilara Sayeed and Dr. Joseph Hoereth, for having me here today, and I look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We wanted to thank all our commissioners that are here today. I believe Commissioner Moore is on, Commissioner Johnson's on, Commissioner Brighton's on, Commissioner Lowry was going to join us. Commissioner Moore, who is a large community on the South Side, was going to join us but had other responsibilities. And then, of course, Commissioner Gaynor, Daly, Degnan, our Commissioner Suffredin, Commissioner Morris, our other Commissioner Morrison, and Commissioner Lowry and Commissioner Sims. And we also especially thank President Preckwinkle for her leadership of Cook County. These are our current institutional sponsors for this work. Please, if you'd like to join us as a sponsor, we'd love to have Cook County be a sponsor of this. We're continuing this work and we continue to need the sponsorships for it. Upcoming events, if you'd like to share this information through a presentation, we are very, very open to helping you do it yourself through our data or to come and present for you. Please email info@ilmuslimciviccoalition.org. Again, you can access the whole report here. And I wanted to thank Julia for reaching out and coordinating this entire Migration Equity Week.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, can you just reshare your screen once more so that we can get the information that you just mentioned so that everyone knows where to access the report, amplify it, and continue to share it. I want to, from the Cook County Commission on Human Rights, send a great big thank you to everyone on this call for hosting this great conversation, sharing this information, and we hope that you will attend more Racial Equity Week events. And with that, there are no questions in the chat. We are over time, but I thank you so much. And if anyone wanted to mention anything at the end, I will open it up for that. But we are so full of gratitude for everyone who helped to make this possible today.